Mom, tomorrow Ryan and I are flying to Europe. I've already sold the lake house. And Michael's old truck too. We needed the money. I wired you 30%. You can take care of yourself with that. Bye. She said it like she was reading a grocery list. And then she hung up. My name is Eleanor Clark. I'm 72 years old. When my only daughter, Jenna, said those words to me, I was sitting in a plastic chair in the waiting room of a hospital in Florida. The air smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. A TV in the corner was playing a daytime talk show. No one was really watching. Around me, people coughed, flipped through magazines, stared at the floor. We were all waiting for our names to be called, each of us holding a quiet fear inside. I looked down at my phone. The screen was black now. No follow-up text. No. Mom, are you okay? No. Mom, when are you done? I'll come get you. Just a short call to tell me my husband's truck was gone. Our lake house was gone, and I should be grateful for my share. You might think my heart started racing, that my chest tightened and the room spun. But that's not what happened. My heart got very calm. Too calm. It felt like something inside me had snapped in half and then gone completely still. For 45 years, I raised that girl. I worked nights. I skipped vacations. I cooked. I cleaned. I stayed awake when she was sick. I clapped at every school play even when she only had one line. I sat in the passenger seat, pressing an invisible brake, while she learned to drive in the very truck she just sold. And now, in a hospital waiting room, she was telling me I was an item on her balance sheet. House sold. Truck sold. Mother left over. The nurse at the front desk called another patient's name. Not mine. Not yet. I put the phone back in my purse. My hands were steady. No shaking. That surprised me more than the phone call. All my life, I only knew how to be two things: someone's wife and someone's mother. I met Michael when I was 20. He was a young electrician then, all sunburned neck and rough hands, always smelling a little like metal and sawdust. I was working as a nurse's aide, changing bed sheets and taking blood pressure for old men who called me sweetheart because they couldn't remember my name. We got married in a small church just outside town. My dress was borrowed. Our rings were cheap silver. The reception was in the church basement with store-brand soda and a cake my sister baked. But that day, I remember thinking, I am the richest woman on earth. We didn't have much, so we did what people like us always do. We worked. I worked day shifts, then evening shifts, then nights. Michael took whatever job came his way, wiring new houses, fixing broken outlets in old apartments, driving an hour out of town to repair something in a farmhouse kitchen. Every Friday night, we would empty our pockets at the kitchen table. Dollar bills, coins, sometimes a crumpled check. Michael kept a small wooden box in the bedroom closet. Every extra dollar went in that box. Our daughter, Jenna, loved that box when she was little. She'd pull it down, sit on the floor, and count the money with sticky fingers. Is this for ice cream, Mom? No, Michael would say. This is for something bigger. For what? For our dream house by the lake, with a swing on the porch. Remember? Her eyes would light up. Oh yeah, the lake house. I'm going to jump off the dock every day. We didn't tell her how many years of overtime that box would cost us. We just smiled and let her dream. Years went by. The box slowly grew heavier. My back started to ache more after long shifts. Michael's knees complained every time he climbed stairs with a tool bag. But one day we opened that box, counted the money, and it was finally enough for a down payment. That's how we got our cabin by the lake. It wasn't fancy. One story, weathered wood siding, a little porch that sagged just enough to squeak when you stepped on it. Michael built a porch swing himself, using leftover boards and more patience than I knew he had. The inside smelled like pine and coffee. In summer, the windows were always open, letting in warm air and the sound of the water. In winter, we sat by the fireplace and wrapped our hands around big mugs of soup. Every holiday we could manage, we went there. Jenna would bring friends in high school, then boyfriends in college. Later, she brought Ryan, the man she eventually married. They'd come out with bags of groceries and fancy cheese I couldn't pronounce, talking loudly about careers and opportunities. I stayed in the kitchen, chopping onions, stirring chili, washing dishes. Michael grilled on the tiny deck out back, wearing an old apron Jenna once made him in art class. I remember one summer afternoon clearly. Jenna was 16, sunburned on her nose, hair still wet from the lake. She came into the kitchen, wrapped her wet arms around me from behind, and kissed my cheek. "Mom, when I'm rich, I'm going to buy you and Dad a place even bigger than this," she said. "You won't have to worry about money ever again. I'll take care of everything." I laughed and told her to stop dripping water on my floor. But inside, I believed her. Michael did too. That night, as we sat on the porch swing and watched the sun go down over the lake, he said, "She's a good kid, Ellie. Smarter than we ever were. She'll have a better life than us." That's all I ever wanted. I nodded. I didn't know that one day, a better life for her would mean selling the cabin we bled for, without even asking. Michael died on a quiet Tuesday morning. No accident. No long hospital stay. Just one heartbeat too many, and then none at all. That morning, he made me coffee in our small kitchen in our regular house in town. It was a little weaker than usual. "Doctor says go easy on the strong stuff," he joked. "Heart doesn't like it." I told him he was being dramatic. He stuck his tongue out at me like a teenager. Then he kissed my forehead like he had done almost every morning for nearly 50 years. 10 minutes later, while we were eating toast, he dropped his knife. I thought he'd just fumbled it, until I saw his face. By the time the paramedics left, the coffee on the table was cold. What happened after that is a blur. There was paperwork, flowers, a funeral, people hugging me and saying the same 3 sentences over and over. "I'm so sorry. He was a good man. Call me if you need anything." Then they went back to their lives. And I was alone in ours. 3 days before he died, there was one small thing I didn't pay much attention to. That morning, Michael called me into the bedroom. The blinds were half open, stripes of light crossing the quilt. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding a yellow envelope. "The kind you put documents in." "Ellie," he said, "I've got something for you." "Oh Lord, more bills?" I joked. "Not bills." He smiled, but his eyes were serious. "I want you to put this in your closet. Top shelf. Behind your scarves. Don't open it yet." "Why not?" "Because you don't need it yet. Open it only when you feel like everything is too much. When you're ready, not before." "That sounds dramatic," I said. "I trust you. You manage the money. I manage the kitchen. That's how we've always done it." "I know," he said softly, "but I won't always be here to manage it." I waved him off, took the envelope, and slid it into the closet between a winter coat and an old shoebox. Then I hurried back to the stove to flip pancakes before they burned. 3 days later, he was gone. And in the thick fog of grief, with casseroles piling up on my counter and relatives asking about his will, I forgot all about the yellow envelope. Until that morning at the hospital. Until Jenna, my little girl who used to count crumpled dollar bills on our bedroom floor, called to tell me she had sold the lake house and her father's truck, and that she had generously sent me 30%. Until she said, without a hint of shame, "We need the money to start our life, Mom." As if my life was already over. On the bus ride home from the hospital, her words kept echoing in my head. Not the part about the money. Not the part about Europe. Those things hurt, yes. But what cut deepest was the tone. Cold. Efficient. Like a stranger talking to a bank teller. I got off at my stop, walked slowly down our street, and unlocked the front door. The house smelled the same, a faint mix of laundry detergent and the lemon cleaner I use on the floors. Michael's boots were still by the door, neatly side by side. His jacket still hung on the hook. I went straight to the bedroom. I opened the closet, pushed past my coats, and reached up to the top shelf. My fingers brushed against cardboard. I pulled it down. The yellow envelope. My name was written on the front in Michael's handwriting. I've seen that handwriting on sticky notes for decades. Don't forget your pills. Paid the electric bill. Love you. Leftover stew in the fridge. This time, those same letters were holding something heavier. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The afternoon light was softer now, turning everything in the room a gentle gold. Dust floated in the air, slow and calm. I ran my thumb along the sealed edge of the envelope. My chest tightened, not from the heart condition my doctor worried about, but from something deeper. I knew that once I tore it open, I couldn't go back. Whatever secret Michael had tucked into this thin layer of paper would change the way I looked at my life, at my daughter, maybe even at myself. "All right, Michael," I whispered into the quiet room. "Let's see what you did." I took a breath. And that was the moment, though I didn't know it yet, when my story stopped being about a poor, abandoned old woman and became the story of an elderly mother who still held more power and more choices than anyone around her realized. I slid my thumb under the flap and opened it. The glue cracked with a soft little sound. Funny how something so quiet can change a whole life. Inside, there wasn't just one piece of paper. There were several. Thick, official pages with stamps and numbers. And on top of them all, folded in half, was a letter. My name again, in Michael's handwriting. I set the other papers aside and opened the letter first. "Ellie, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to explain things the way I'd like to. So I'm going to do it the only way I can now. On paper." Right there, my eyes blurred. I had to blink a few times before the words settled again. "You always trusted me to take care of the money," he wrote, "and I know sometimes you joked that I was too secretive about it. The truth is, I wasn't hiding things from you because I didn't trust you. I was hiding them because I knew the world can be cruel to people like us, and sometimes our own children can be careless with what we bled for." I read that sentence 3 times. Our own children. For a moment, my chest hurt more from that line than from anything the doctor had said about my heart. "I started investing little by little years ago," the letter went on. "Nothing big at first. Just small shares in companies I understood, some rental properties in bad neighborhoods that people with money didn't want to touch. I fixed things myself, painted the walls, did the wiring. Every extra job I took, every overtime shift, if we didn't need the money to live, I put it to work." I could almost see him, younger, with more hair, coming home late, clothes smelling like dust and old wires, telling me it had been just another job, while quietly building something I had no idea about. "You were busy taking care of everyone's bodies, Ellie," he wrote. "Somebody had to take care of our future." I pressed the letter to my chest for a second, then forced myself to keep reading. "The reason I didn't tell you everything is simple," the next part said. "You and I, we know how to live with little. We always have. But Jenna grew up in a different world. If she ever found out how much we really had, I was afraid she'd love the comfort more than she loves us. I was afraid the wrong people would smell money and circle like vultures." The wrong people. My mind jumped, without permission, to Ryan's face. His expensive watch. His smooth talk about opportunities in Europe and low risk, high reward. I kept reading. "So, I did something that may make you mad at me for a while," he admitted. "I put most of our assets under a company name. On paper, it looks like some boring little LLC. In reality, that company is you, Ellie. You're the sole owner." I glanced at the other documents spread on the bed. "I've included the papers in this envelope," he wrote. "You'll see the company name, the list of properties, the accounts. The cabin by the lake is only one small piece. There are other houses. The apartment building Jenna lives in now. Some land on the edge of town that might be worth something one day. And yes, some stocks that have done better than I expected." I picked up the top document, hand shaking a little now. The company name was printed in bold at the top. Clark Family Holdings, LLC. Owner, Eleanor M. Clark. My name. On the next page, there was a list. Property after property. Addresses I recognized from different parts of the city. A duplex on the south side. A small brick house near the old factory. A 4-unit building not far from the hospital where I'd worked. And there, halfway down the page, Lakeside Cabin, parcel hashtag, and a little further, Maple Heights Apartments, 24 units. I knew that one. That was the building where Jenna and Ryan lived. My breath caught. I had been there more than once. Brought soup when Jenna said she was sick. Dropped off birthday gifts when she was too busy to come to my house. I'd stood in that parking lot, looking up at their third-floor balcony, thinking, they're doing so well. They have a nicer place than we ever did. All this time, I had thought it was their building. It wasn't. It was mine. No, Michael would have corrected me. It was ours. I looked back at the letter. Very clearly, you are not a poor widow. You are a woman with options. Real options. You don't have to be at the mercy of anyone. Not of banks. Not of the government. Not even of our own child if she decides to take advantage of you. My throat felt tight. In the best case, Michael continued, Jenna will keep loving us for who we are, not for what we own. In the worst case, well, if she ever forgets what matters, these papers will be your shield. And maybe, if you're stronger than I am, they'll also be your way to teach her what I never could. My eyes lingered on that last line. Your way to teach her what I never could. The hospital smell was gone now. The sound of the waiting room, the nurse calling names, Jenna's flat voice over the phone, everything faded for a moment. There was only me on that bed, with a stack of documents and a dead man's love letter. I picked up the bank statements next. The numbers didn't make sense at first. I wasn't used to seeing that many zeros lined up in neat rows. Savings accounts. Investment accounts. A retirement fund much larger than anything I'd imagined. All those years, I had complained that we couldn't afford certain things. Vacations. New furniture. A nicer car. Michael always said the same thing. We're fine, Ellie. We don't need more. Let's just be comfortable. I thought he was just being cautious. I didn't realize he was quietly building a wall around us. A wall made of property deeds and account balances and legal structures I'd never heard of. I put everything down and just sat there, hands on my knees. You might think I felt happy in that moment. Relieved. Excited even. I didn't. What I felt was a strange mix of grief, anger, and something like guilt. Grief, because he had carried all this alone, without ever once burdening me with the numbers. Anger, because Jenna had just sold the one piece of this whole puzzle she knew about our lake house like it was a second-hand couch. And guilt, because part of me, a small, ugly part, was almost glad she had done it after Michael died. If he had seen that, it would have killed him anyway. I picked up the letter again. At the end of this envelope, Michael had written, I've left you the card of an attorney I trust. His name is Daniel Harris. He helped me set all of this up. If you're reading this, I want you to go see him. Bring these documents. Let him explain anything you don't understand. He's on your side. A business card was stapled to the corner. Daniel J. Harris, attorney at law. I traced the phone number with my finger. In case I didn't say it enough while I was alive, the letter ended. I believe in you, Ellie. You are stronger than you think. You always have been. Maybe I was the one who needed to catch up to you. If the world ever makes you feel small, remember this. On paper, you may own these things. But in reality, it's your heart that built them. I love you, Michael. The last sentence broke whatever was left of my composure. For a while, I let myself cry. Quietly, the way old people do. No sobbing, no drama. Just silent tears that fell onto the pages and blurred the ink. When the tears stopped, I wiped my face, smoothed the letter out, and put it carefully back on top of the stack. Then, I did something I hadn't done since the funeral. I stood up a little straighter. I walked to the kitchen, made myself a fresh cup of coffee, and sat down at the table, the same table where Michael used to spread our bills and his little wooden box of cash. I laid out the documents in neat rows, like puzzle pieces. The lake house was on one page. The apartment building where Jenna lived was on another. The bank accounts on a third. And right in the middle, that company name tying everything together. For the first time since Michael died, my mind started working again, not as a grieving widow, not as a discarded mother, but as something I wasn't used to being. A woman with choices. Jenna thought she had sold the lake house and emptied my life into her suitcase. Ryan thought he had married into a family he could squeeze dry and then walk away from. They both thought I was powerless. I set my coffee down and picked up Mr. Harris's card. On your side, Michael had written. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet. I just knew one thing. Before I made any move, before I spoke another word to my daughter, I needed to understand exactly what I was holding in my hands. So the next morning, I put on my good blouse, the one I usually saved for holidays and doctor appointments, brushed my hair, and tucked Michael's envelope into my purse. Then I left the house, locked the door behind me, and went to meet the man who was about to tell me just how wrong my daughter had been when she decided I had nothing left. Mr. Harris's office was downtown, in one of those old brick buildings that had probably seen better days. The kind with creaky elevators and a lobby that smelled faintly of dust and floor wax. I could have asked someone to drive me. I didn't. I took the bus. There's something about riding the bus at my age. You sit there, hands on your purse, watching the city move past, and you realize how much has changed without you. Stores you used to go to are gone. New glass towers show up where old diners used to be. Couples stare at their phones instead of each other. But pain? Pain looks the same in every decade. I saw it on a young man's face as he argued quietly with someone on speakerphone. I saw it on an older woman rubbing her knees, eyes closed. It reminded me that I wasn't the only one riding around with a heart full of trouble. When the bus finally dropped me off, I stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the building. The sign by the door said, Harris and Cole, Attorneys at Law. Inside, everything was beige. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige chairs. A receptionist with neat hair and kind eyes looked up when I walked in. Good morning. Do you have an appointment? Yes, I said. With Mr. Harris. I'm Eleanor Clark. She checked her computer, then smiled. Yes, Mrs. Clark. He'll be right with you. Please have a seat. I sat down, placing Michael's envelope carefully on my lap, like it was made of glass. A few minutes later, a man in his 60s came out. Thinning hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a tie that looked like it had seen a few decades of courtrooms. Mrs. Clark, he said. Yes. I'm Daniel Harris. It's nice to finally meet you. Michael talked about you often. That caught me off guard. He did. I asked. Oh, yes, he said, gesturing for me to follow him down the hall. Your husband was very proud of you. And very protective. Come on back. Let's sit down. His office was small but tidy. No big mahogany desk like in the movies. Just a simple wooden one, a filing cabinet, and a couple of chairs. I sat. He closed the door and took a seat across from me. So, he said gently, how are you holding up, Mrs. Clark? I know Michael's passing wasn't that long ago. I swallowed. I'm still breathing, I said. Some days that feels like enough. He nodded. Not the kind of nod people do when they're just being polite, but the kind that says, I've heard that before and I believe you. And I see you brought the envelope, he added, tapping the papers. Yes. He said you'd explain it. I opened it yesterday. I didn't really understand what I was looking at. That's all right, he said. That's my job. Why don't you slide it over here and we'll go through it together? I handed him the envelope. He took out the documents, spread them out, and adjusted his glasses. For a few minutes, there was only the sound of paper and the soft ticking of a clock on the wall. Then he sat back and looked at me with a small, impressed smile. Well, he said softly, I knew Michael was careful, but I didn't know he'd done this well. What does that mean? I asked. I know the numbers are big, but what does it all really mean? It means, Mr. Harris said, that you, Mrs. Clark, are in a much stronger position than you realize. He pointed to the company document. This is a limited liability company, he explained. Clark Family Holdings. Your husband set it up years ago. And as he wrote in his letter, you are the sole member and owner. Everything listed here belongs to that company. And that company belongs to you. He slid the property list toward me. These, he said, tapping each address, are all yours. The cabin by the lake. The apartment building on Maple Heights. These smaller rental houses. The savings and investment accounts. All of it. I looked at the list again, as if the words might change if I stared long enough. And you're sure, I asked quietly, that legally this is real? That this isn't some mistake. He smiled. I helped him set it up, he said. I filed the paperwork myself. There's no mistake. I sat back in my chair. For a moment, the room felt too small. Michael wanted to protect you, Mr. Harris continued. He'd seen too many stories of widows being pushed around. By banks. By scammers. Sometimes even by their own kids. That last part stung more than I wanted it to. I cleared my throat. Mr. Harris, I said, my daughter sold the lake house.
He stopped.
The pleasant expression on his face faded. She what? Yesterday, I said. She called me from the airport. Said she'd already sold the cabin and Michael's truck. Said her and her husband, needed the money to start a new life in Europe. She wired me 30% and kept the rest. She told me I should take care of myself with that. There are phrases you never want to say out loud because once you do, they're real. This was one of them. Mr. Harris looked at me for a long moment. Did you sign anything? He asked. Any documents, any deeds, power of attorney, anything like that? I shook my head slowly. I don't remember signing anything about the cabin, I said. After Michael died, there were some papers Jenna brought over. She said they were for the funeral for the bank for something with Social Security. I wasn't really reading them. I just trusted her. Understandable, he said. But do you remember if any of them mentioned Clark Family Holdings or this company name here? He pointed at the header. I squinted. I don't think so, I said. I would have remembered that. He nodded. Then she had no legal right to sell that cabin, he said calmly. On paper, the owner is this company. And you are the company. Unless you gave her written authority to act on behalf of Clark Family Holdings specifically, any sale she made is invalid. I blinked. Invalid?
Yes.
The buyer may have acted in good faith, thinking she had the right. But she didn't. We can challenge the sale. In fact, with these documents, it shouldn't be very difficult to reverse it. He paused, studying my face. And the truck, he asked. Whose name was on the title? Michael's, I said. He never changed it. After he died, I suppose it would have passed to me with everything else. He nodded slowly. She might have been able to sign something at the DMV if they thought she was the only heir, or if they were careless. The truck might be more complicated to get back. But the house? That's clear. She had no authority to sell it. He sat back, hands folded. I'm sorry, Mrs. Clark, he said gently. I know this is hard to hear, but I need you to understand exactly what happened. Your daughter didn't just make a bad decision. She tried to sell property that didn't belong to her. A part of me knew that already, but hearing someone else say it out loud made it land in a different way. What can I do? I asked. He leaned forward. That depends on what you want, he said. Legally, we have several options. We can completely undo the sale of the cabin. We can notify the buyer that they purchased from someone who had no legal authority to sell. They'll get their money back from the escrow or from your daughter and her husband. The cabin returns to the company. We can also, if you want, pursue charges for elder financial abuse or fraud. The words elder financial abuse hung in the air like a bad smell. I swallowed. You're saying I could send my own daughter to jail? I said quietly. I'm saying, he answered carefully, that what she did could qualify as a serious crime. Whether we pursue that is another question.
That's not just about law.
That's about family and what you can live with. I looked down at my hands. The skin on the back of them is thin now. You can see the veins, the little brown spots. These hands had bathed a baby, held a husband's hand in sickness, poured coffee, washed dishes, folded clothes. I never imagined I'd have to use them to sign papers against my own child. I don't want her in jail, I said finally. I don't want her ruined. She's still my daughter. That's understandable, he said. We don't have to go that route. We can handle this quietly. We reverse the sale. We secure your other assets. We make sure nothing else can be sold or borrowed against without your direct consent. He looked at me, measuring my reaction. There is one more thing, he added. The building on Maple Heights. The one where Jenna and her husband live. That building is owned by your company as well. I saw that, I said softly. I had no idea. If they've taken out loans using that apartment as collateral, thinking it was theirs, he shook his head. Well, the banks are in for a surprise. But that's their problem, not yours. He took off his glasses and set them on the desk. Mrs. Clark, you have more power here than you think. The question is, how do you want to use it? I sat there, the word power echoing in my head like it belonged to someone else. In my mind, I saw Jenna as a little girl again, hair in pigtails, standing in the shallow water at the lake, arms spread out. Watch me, Mom. Watch me. I had watched her whole life. Watched her take her first steps, first job, first apartment. Watched her marry a man I never quite trusted. Watched her slowly change the way she talked to me, from soft to sharp, from asking to ordering. Now she had crossed a line I didn't even know existed until I saw my name on those documents. What would you do? I asked Mr. Harris. If you were me? He smiled sadly. I don't have children, he said. So I can't pretend to know how that feels. But I can tell you what other clients your age have done in similar situations. He leaned back. Some choose to cut the child off completely, change their will, move away, start over. Others pretend it never happened and let the child continue taking advantage because they're afraid of being alone. And then there are a few, very few, who decide to do something in between. In between. I repeated.
Yes. They protect themselves.
They quietly secure their assets. They make sure no more harm can be done. But they also leave room for the child to learn, to grow, to redeem themselves. Not by handing them money, but by, he paused, searching for the right word, by allowing consequences. Allowing consequences. That phrase settled in my chest. All my life, when Jenna fell, I had been the one to run over, pick her up, clean the scrape, and tell her it would be all right. Even when she was grown, whenever she called with a problem, I reached for my wallet, my time, my energy. What if, just this once, I didn't rush to pad the ground beneath her? What would that look like? I asked slowly, protecting myself, allowing consequences. Mr. Harris put his glasses back on. First, he said, I'll file to reverse the sale of the cabin. We'll do it quietly, through the proper legal channels. The buyers will be compensated. The property will be back under your company's name. He picked up another paper. Second, we make sure every property is clearly recorded under the company with you as the only authorized signatory. No one else, no daughter, no son-in-law, no bank manager, can sign anything without you. If Jenna or Ryan try to use any of your assets as collateral again, the answer from the law will be simple. They don't own it. He hesitated. Third, we can take control of the Maple Heights building in a more active way. You are the landlord, whether they know it or not. You can decide what happens to every tenant in that building, including your daughter. I knew what he was implying before he said it. You mean, I murmured, I could evict her? He nodded. If they've been living there without paying proper rent, or if they've used the property illegally, you'd be within your rights. That doesn't have to happen right away, but the option is there. I sat very still. Jenna had thrown me out of my own life with a 2-minute phone call in a hospital waiting room. I could, if I wanted to, return the gesture with one piece of paper slid under her door. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I straightened my back and looked Mr. Harris in the eye. Do what you need to do, I said. Reverse the sale. Lock everything down. Take full control of the building. And the eviction? He asked gently. Not yet, I said. If there's one thing being this age has taught me, it's that life has a way of catching up to people on its own. Jenna made her choices. Ryan made his. Let's see where those choices take them. I picked up Michael's letter, folded it carefully, and put it back in the envelope. But when they come back, I added, and they will come back, I don't want to be the helpless old woman they think I am. I want to be ready. Mr. Harris nodded, something like respect in his eyes. In that case, he said, I'll get started today. As I left his office and stepped back out onto the noisy street, I noticed something strange. The world was the same. Cars honked. People rushed by. A siren wailed in the distance. But inside, something had shifted. I walked a little slower, but each step felt firmer than the last. My daughter thought I was alone, powerless, easy to move off the board like a forgotten pawn in a game of chess she was playing with her husband. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know yet, was that I was not off the board. I had just learned I was the one holding the queen. And somewhere between the bus stop and my front door, a quiet thought settled in my mind. Let's see what happens when the child who sold my house for her future realizes her whole future is standing right here, wearing my old shoes. Mr. Harris kept his promise. Over the next few weeks, he called me regularly. Sometimes from his office. Sometimes from the courthouse. Sometimes from his car, with a bit of traffic noise behind him. Mrs. Clark, the paperwork to reverse the cabin sale has been filed. Mrs. Clark, the buyers have been notified. They were surprised, but they'll get their money back. Mrs. Clark, the county records have been updated. The lake house is officially back under Clark Family Holdings. Each update felt like a brick being set back into a wall that had once crumbled. On my end, though, life didn't look powerful. On the outside, I was just an old woman living alone in a modest house, taking the bus to doctor appointments and buying discounted fruit at the corner store. My neighbor, Dolores, made sure to remind me of that. Dolores had been my neighbor for over 30 years. The kind of woman who always knew who moved in, who moved out, and which couple was fighting about what. She meant well most of the time. One afternoon, I was out front watering the little row of roses I keep along the fence when she came shuffling over in her house slippers, waving a mail flyer like a fan. "Eleanor, honey," she said, lowering her voice as if the roses might be listening. "Is it true? Did Jenna go off to Europe and leave you here all by yourself?" I tightened my grip on the hose. "Yes," I said. "She and Ryan left a few weeks ago." Dolores clucked her tongue. These kids nowadays. No respect. My niece's boy did something similar to my sister. Took her car, said he'd handle the paperwork. She ended up with nothing. Are you going to be okay? You know, Social Security isn't much. If only she knew, I thought. Out loud, I said, "I'll manage, Dee. I've always managed." She looked at me with that look people reserve for widows and strays. "Well, if you need me to drive you somewhere, you just knock on my door, all right? I can't do much, but I can do that." Her heart was kind. Her assumptions were small. "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." As she walked back to her house, I turned off the hose and stood there for a moment, listening to the soft drip of water from the petals. On this side of the fence, I was poor Mrs. Clark, whose daughter ran off with her house. On the other side of town, in an office with beige walls, I was Mrs. Clark, sole owner of multiple properties and land, whose signature could change several lives at the stroke of a pen. It was a strange thing living two lives in one body. While Mr. Harris was filing papers and Dolores was worrying about my grocery money, something else was happening, thousands of miles away. At the time, I didn't know the details. I only knew the headline. "We needed the money to start our life in Europe, Mom." The rest I learned later, in bits and pieces, from Jenna's own mouth. But for the sake of this story, I'll tell it to you straight, the way I see it now. While I was sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee and my husband's envelope, Jenna and Ryan were stepping off a plane into a European airport, dragging shiny suitcases across a polished floor. Jenna had always dreamed of Europe. When she was younger, she taped pictures of Paris and Rome and Barcelona on her bedroom wall. Little streets, old churches, women on bicycles with scarves in their hair. Later, when she started working in marketing, she loved talking about international brands and global lifestyles. Ryan fed that dream. "Why keep living in a town that's dying?" he'd say at my dinner table, cutting into the roast I cooked. "The real opportunities are overseas. Tech, real estate, tourism. People make in 1 year what you'd earn here in 10. I didn't like the way he said here, like the ground under our feet was something he had already thrown away. But Jenna's eyes would shine. "Imagine it, Mom," she'd say. "Coffee on a balcony, overlooking the river. Weekend trips to other countries. We could rent out the lake house on Airbnb, use the extra income to grow faster. It's smart money." I'd look at Michael's picture on the wall and wonder what he would say. But he was gone, and the decisions were no longer ours. When their plane landed, they recorded a short video from the taxi and sent it to me. "Look, Mom," Jenna said, turning the camera to show narrow streets and old stone buildings. "Isn't it beautiful? This is just the beginning." Ryan leaned into the frame with a grin. "Tell her we found a great deal on a corner cafe," he said. "By the time you visit, Mrs. Clark, we'll be running our own business." I watched that video alone in my living room, the sound of the TV still on in the background. I forced a smile back at the screen and typed, "Looks wonderful, honey. Be safe." What I didn't see in that video, what Jenna didn't see either, was the stack of papers in Ryan's carry-on bag. Loan agreements, investment contracts, numbers that didn't add up. At first, things felt like a vacation. They stayed in a little rental near the city center. Jenna sent me pictures of pastries, street musicians, sunsets over old rooftops. "We're meeting with a realtor tomorrow," she texted. "He has a line on a cafe space. Ryan says it's the deal of a lifetime." I replied with a thumbs-up emoji. It seemed like the thing parents do now. But deals of a lifetime, they have a way of not feeling like that in the moment. The first crack, Jenna told me later, showed up at their kitchen table in that rented flat. Ryan sat with his laptop open, frowning. "What do you mean the loan terms changed?"
Jenna asked.
"It's temporary," he said. "Just some additional fees to get started. Interest rates went up. It's the market. We'll refinance later, once the business is running." "How much are we talking about?" she pressed. He waved his hand. "Don't worry, babe. Between the cabin money, the truck, and the line of credit in your name, we're fine." "In my name," she repeated. "Just for now," he said quickly. "You have better credit. It's easier. We're married. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, right?" Jenna hesitated, then nodded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe the lake house she'd convinced herself was just an asset, would transform into something bigger, something that would make us all proud. She wanted to believe she hadn't betrayed her parents for nothing. So she stopped asking questions. For a while. While they were busy in Europe, Mr. Harris was busy in court. He found the buyers of the cabin, an older couple planning for retirement. They had been told, by a real estate agent and by Jenna, that I was sick, that I needed to sell quickly, that it was sad but necessary. When Mr. Harris explained the truth, their faces went pale. They weren't villains. They were just people who thought they'd found a bargain. They got their money back. The cabin came home. The truck, as Mr. Harris predicted, was trickier. It had changed hands twice already. But then, by some twist of grace, the latest owner turned out to be an acquaintance of Mr. Harris's brother-in-law. When he heard the story, he agreed to sell it back for a little more than he paid. "Old man liked the truck," Mr. Harris told me over the phone. Said he never kept anything that still smelled like someone else's life. I told him this one belonged with you. So one morning, I looked out the window and there it was, parked in front of my house. Michael's truck. Same dent on the back bumper where he backed into a grocery cart years ago. Same crack on the right side of the windshield, like a crooked smile. When I opened the door, the seat still creaked the way it always had. I sat inside for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, breathing in the faint scent of oil and old upholstery. Jenna had turned my memories into cash. I had turned them back. Not because I needed a truck at my age, but because there are some things you hold on to not for practical reasons, but to remind yourself of who you were before other people tried to rewrite your story. Back in Europe, the rewrites kept coming. After a few months, the vacation feeling wore off. The cafe deal fell through. The landlord doubled the rent. The bank refused to extend more credit. Tourists came and went, but profits didn't match the numbers Ryan had scribbled on napkins. "You said this was all set," Jenna told him one night, voice low and tight. "You said you had it under control." "I did," he snapped. "No one could have predicted this. Besides, it's not just on me. You wanted this too." She stared at him across the little rental kitchen table, the same way I had once stared at Michael across ours. Except my husband had never gambled with my home. "How much do we owe?" she asked. Ryan rubbed his face. "It's only temporary," he muttered. "Don't panic." "How much?" she repeated. He sighed and opened his laptop. Numbers filled the screen. Converted from euros to dollars, the totals made Jenna's stomach roll. Ryan, she whispered, we never owed this much when we lived back home. In the beginning of any big move, there's always a little chaos, he said. You can't build something great without taking risks. You knew that when you agreed to sell the cabin. She flinched.
He saw it.
And he used it. Unless you're saying you regret that. His tone sharpened. You regret investing in our future? You regret backing me up? That's the thing about people who love control more than they love you. They're very good at twisting guilt into a leash. Jenna shook her head, tears stinging. No, she said slowly. I thought we had a plan. And we do, he insisted. We just need a little more runway. Maybe we can tap into your credit line again. Or, he paused, watching her face. We could see what your mom has left. She's got that house in town. Maybe she can downsize. A condo would be easier for her to manage anyway. Jenna stared at him. Are you serious? She said. We already took the cabin and the truck. You want me to ask her to sell the house too? Ryan leaned back. You're looking at this the wrong way, he said. You're not taking anything. You're making sure she's taken care of in the long run. Europe is more expensive than we thought. The dollar is weak. We're adjusting. That's what smart people do. Your mom's just sitting on equity. This is what wealthy families do all the time. Wealthy families. My family wasn't wealthy in the way he meant. Not with yachts and mansions. Our wealth had been measured in years of shared sacrifices and a little cabin by a lake.
But he didn't see it that way.
Jenna didn't answer him that night. She just went to bed with a knot in her stomach. For the first time, she let herself wonder if maybe, just maybe, she'd made a terrible mistake. The wondering didn't last long, because trouble has a way of speeding things up. Soon the calls started. First from one bank, then another. Emails, letters, notices. Words like delinquent, past due, immediate attention required. Ryan dismissed them at first. I'll handle it, he'd say, grabbing the mail and shoving it into a drawer. Don't stress. But stress doesn't need permission. It seeps in through the cracks under the door. One day, Jenna picked up a call Ryan thought he'd intercepted. Mrs. Rhodes, a stern voice asked, using Ryan's last name. We're calling regarding the loans tied to the property at Maple Heights, back in the States. It appears there's been some discrepancy in the ownership records. Jenna froze. What do you mean? She asked. The property is not in your husband's name as indicated on the application, the voice said. It appears to be owned by a corporate entity. Jenna's mouth went dry. A corporate entity. I imagine she started to feel the floor under her shift, just a little. She hung up the phone, walked into the kitchen, and put the handset on the table with more care than necessary. Ryan, she said, voice trembling. What did you do with the apartment building? He didn't look up from his laptop. I told you I used it to secure better terms, he said. It's normal. In your name, she pressed. They said it's owned by a company. He finally met her eyes. Ellie's company, he said. Same difference. It's all family money. Jenna took a step back as if he'd hit her. You used my mother's building as collateral, she whispered, without telling me it wasn't in your name. You lied on the applications. Ryan stood up, so fast his chair scraped the tile. Oh, here we go, he said. Saint Jenna, shocked that her husband is doing what everyone else in the world is doing. You think rich people play by the same rules as you? They leverage. They take advantage of loopholes. They move assets around. That's how the game is played. She shook her head, tears spilling now. No, she said. That's how cheaters play. Those were words I didn't hear until much later. But I'd waited my whole life for her to say them, to anyone. The fight lasted hours. At the end of it, Ryan slammed the door, grabbed one of the suitcases, and disappeared into the night. The next morning he was gone. His clothes gone. His laptop gone. The last of their cash gone. On the kitchen table, he left a note written on the back of a cafe receipt. Don't call me. I'll handle my own mess. You can figure out yours. No, I'm sorry. No, thank you for believing in me. Just a man walking away from a burning house he'd lit himself, leaving someone else inside. Back home, I didn't know any of this yet. All I knew was that my phone had gone strangely quiet. The pictures stopped. The excited texts about street markets and museum days stopped. Days turned into a week. Then 2. Then 3. I told myself they were busy. I told myself time zones were tricky. I told myself, it's funny what we tell ourselves, isn't it? That maybe no news was good news. Michael's envelope sat in its new place in my desk drawer, next to my checkbook. Mr. Harris's number was on the fridge like a doctor's. Life became a strange blend of small routines and large secrets. I went for morning walks. I made myself oatmeal. I paid utility bills like any other retiree. And then, in the afternoons, I sat at my kitchen table with property reports and legal updates spread out like cards in a solitaire game, only I knew the rules too. One Friday, Dolores came by with a casserole. I made too much, she said, which I knew was a lie. You shouldn't have to cook all the time. Not at your age. She glanced around my little kitchen. Have you heard from Jenna? She asked. Not lately, I said. Dolores sighed. Kids, she muttered. They take and they take. We love them anyway, don't we? I smiled politely and took the casserole. Yes, I said. We do. But that night, after I put the leftovers in the fridge, I sat down at the table, looked at Michael's letter, and corrected her in my head. We don't just love them anyway. If we're wise, and that's what this channel is about, isn't it? Wisdom, we learn to love them differently. Not with our eyes closed. Not at the cost of our own dignity. We learn to love them with our eyes open and our names still firmly on our own life. A month after the last message from Europe, my phone finally rang. Not a polite daytime ring. The harsh, desperate kind. Late at night. The kind of call that either brings bad news from a hospital or from a child who has finally run through every other option. I looked at the screen. Jenna. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Old habit, to give myself a second before facing whatever was on the other side. Then I answered. Hello. Mom, she sobbed. I'm at the airport. Her voice sounded smaller than I'd heard it in years. Younger somehow. What's wrong? I asked, though a part of me already knew. Ryan left, she whispered. He just left. I came back to the apartment, and his things were gone. And the banks, Mom, the banks won't stop calling. They say I owe money I never agreed to. They say the apartment building isn't even ours. They say. She broke off, choking on her own words. I closed my eyes. There it was. The sound of someone hitting the ground they thought would never rise up to meet them. Are you safe? I asked first. Do you have your passport? Your cards? A place to sleep until your flight? I'm at the airport now, she said. I bought the cheapest ticket I could find back home. I had to sell my wedding ring. I don't know what to do, Mom. I have nowhere to go. I have no money. I messed everything up. I looked around my quiet kitchen. The truck keys hung on a hook by the back door. Michael's picture watched me from the wall. The documents in my desk drawer waited patiently. I'll be here when you land, I said. You can come home. Are you sure? She whispered. After what I did? Yes, I said. You're still my daughter. I paused, letting the words settle. But Jenna, I added softly, when you get here, things are not going to be the way you left them. I didn't explain what I meant. Some lessons, especially the important ones, can't be delivered over the phone. They have to be learned face to face. In the same kitchen where a mother once packed lunches and a daughter once promised to buy her a bigger house, when I'm rich, we were about to have a conversation that would decide what the rest of our lives looked like. She just didn't know it yet. Jenna looked smaller when she stepped out of the cab than when she'd left. Airports do that to people. They strip away the polish and leave you with whatever's underneath. She stood at the bottom of my front steps with one suitcase and a backpack. No designer carry-on this time. No smug grin. Just dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a tired knot, and a wrinkle between her brows that hadn't been there before. For a second, she just stared at the door. I opened it before she could knock. Hi, Mom, she said, voice cracking. Come in, I answered. We stood there in the doorway, facing each other like two women who had met before but weren't sure exactly who the other one was anymore. For a moment, I thought she might hug me. Her shoulders moved like she was about to. Then something, guilt, pride, shame, stopped her. Her arms dropped. I stepped aside. Put your bag in your old room, I said. We'll talk after you've had some water. In the kitchen, I poured her a glass. Her hands shook a little when she took it. She drank it in big gulps, like someone who hadn't had anything solid in a while. Thank you, she whispered. We sat at the table. The same table where she'd eaten cereal as a child, where she'd told us she'd gotten into college, where she'd once announced, with champagne in hand, Ryan and I are moving to the city. It's going to be amazing. Now she sat there empty-handed, staring at a small crack in the laminate like it held the secret to her life. I don't know where to start, she finally said. Try the beginning, I answered. That usually works. She let out a humorless little breath. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Europe was supposed to be a new start, she said. We were going to open a cafe. Ryan had friends there.
Investors.
He said we had everything lined up. All we needed was the cabin money and the truck and a few loans. She swallowed. I didn't ask enough questions, she admitted. I just trusted him. He made it sound so smart. So grown up. Like something people who actually know what they're doing would do. He kept saying, this is what rich families do, Jenna. They leverage. They use what they have to get more. She looked up at me, eyes shining with tears. I thought that's what we were doing with the cabin, Mom. Leveraging. I told myself you'd be proud of me. That I was finally playing big. That's why I called you from the hospital that day, talking like I did. I was trying not to sound guilty. Is that what that was? I asked softly. You trying not to sound guilty? She flinched. Yes, she said. And I did a terrible job of it. Silence settled between us for a few seconds, heavy, but not empty. What happened after you sold everything? I asked. Tell me the truth this time. No slogans, no opportunities. Just the truth.
So she did.
She told me about the cafe lease that fell through. About the landlord who raised the rent twice before they even opened their doors. About the bank that demanded more collateral. About the calls from lenders in the middle of the night. She told me about the morning she picked up a call Ryan had been dodging. The man on the phone said the apartment building back here wasn't ours, she said, voice shaking. He said it belonged to a company, not to Ryan. He wanted to know why Ryan had signed papers saying he owned it. She twisted her hands together on the table, like she was trying to wring the memory out of her skin. When I confronted Ryan, he made me feel stupid, she said. Like I didn't understand how the world works. He kept talking about paper ownership and control and family money. He said the banks would never look that closely as long as we made payments. But we couldn't make payments.
Not all of them.
Not on what he'd taken. He started staying out later, coming home angrier. And then, I asked, even though I knew the ending. And then one day, he just wasn't there, she said. His suitcase was gone. His laptop. He left a note saying he'd handle his side, and I should handle mine. I found out later he'd bought a ticket to Paris with some waitress he'd met at a bar. She gave a short, broken laugh. Turns out, Mom, I wasn't the only one he was leveraging. We sat with that for a moment. I didn't know what else to do, she continued. The bank started talking about lawsuits and fraud. They said my name was on some of the paperwork. They said I signed things I've never seen. I panicked. I sold my ring. I bought the cheapest flight back home. I couldn't call Ryan. I couldn't call any of my friends. I was too ashamed. So, I called you. I see, I said. Her eyes filled again. I know what I did to you is wrong, she said, the words tumbling out now fast and clumsy. Selling the cabin, the truck. Talking to you like you were in my way. I've replayed that phone call 100 times since. I hear my voice and I hate it. I sound like someone I don't even recognize. She looked at me like she was waiting for a sentence. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me, she whispered. I wouldn't forgive me. But I didn't know where else to go. I don't have anywhere else to go. I let the silence stretch a little longer than was comfortable. Young people, well, younger than me, are so quick to fill silence. They're not used to letting their words sit there and show their weight. Finally, I said, "You're here. That's what matters right now." "Does it?" she asked, voice tiny. "Yes," I said. "You're still my daughter." Her shoulders shook. This time, she didn't stop herself. She stood up, came around the table, and fell into my arms like she did when she was 5 and skinned her knee on the sidewalk. I held her. I didn't pat her back and say it was okay, because it wasn't okay, but I did hold her. There's a difference. After a while, we pulled apart. I handed her a tissue. "You can stay here," I said. "For now." "For now," she repeated, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "For now," I said again. "We'll talk about later when later comes." That night, we moved her old bed back into her childhood room. The posters were gone, the stuffed animals packed away years ago, but the walls remembered her. I could feel it. She stood in the doorway, hugging herself. "It feels smaller," she said. "No," I answered. "You just feel bigger." She didn't sleep much that first night. The next morning, I heard her in the kitchen before I got up, opening cabinets, standing there like she'd forgotten where I kept the coffee. Old rhythms take time to come back. She made breakfast, burned the toast a little. We ate in near silence. She insisted on doing the dishes. "I have to do something," she said. "I can't just sit here." So she scrubbed the plates as if she could scrub away the last year. During the day, she made phone calls
To banks.
to credit card companies, to people with titles that sounded important and tired. I listened from the other room. "No, I didn't sign that." "No, I didn't know he'd use that as collateral." "No, I didn't understand those terms." Sometimes, she'd hang up and sit very still for a long time. Once, I saw her put her head down on the table the way she used to when she couldn't finish her math homework. I wanted to go in there and say, "It's all right. We'll fix it." Instead, I stayed in the doorway and watched. There's a kind of pain you can't spare people from, no matter how much you love them. The best you can do is be close enough to catch them if they decide they want to stand up again. That night, when she thought I'd gone to bed, she sat on the couch with the TV off, staring at nothing. I came and sat down beside her. "Have you eaten?" I asked. She shook her head. "I'm not hungry." I stood, went to the kitchen, made her a simple sandwich and brought it back. "Eat," I said. "You can't think straight on an empty stomach." She took a bite because I asked her to, not because she wanted to. "Mom," she said after a minute. "Yes. I know you think I only cared about the money," she said. "About the house, the truck, the future. But the worst part isn't losing all of that. The worst part is realizing I lost you in the process." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "You didn't lose me," I said. "You walked away from me. That's different." She flinched, but she didn't argue. Honesty between us was new. It was going to sting. The next few days fell into a strange routine. In the mornings, Jenna made coffee and looked for jobs online. In the afternoons, she drove my car to interviews or to meet with whatever free legal aid office would see her. Sometimes, she came home with a glimmer of hope. More often, she came home with new words like damaging credit history and pending investigations hanging over her head. One evening, she opened the fridge and stared at the shelves. "I'll start contributing to groceries as soon as I can," she said. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," I said. "You're my guest." "I don't want to be that either," she murmured. "I want to be useful." That word sat with me. Useful. So many older people I know feel useless the moment they stop working or their kids move out. And now here was my grown daughter, feeling the same way. It struck me that time doesn't change certain fears. It just puts different faces on them. A few days later, she came home from yet another interview with her shoulders straighter. "I got a job," she said. "What kind of job?" "Cleaning offices at night," she said. "Part-time. It's not glamorous, but it's a paycheck. And they don't care about my credit score as long as I show up and do the work." Something in her eyes had shifted. It wasn't the old, reckless confidence. It was quieter. Harder one.
Good, I said.
There's no shame in cleaning. I've cleaned plenty in my life. She smiled, a brief, grateful twist of the lips. I know, she said. That's what scares me. The first night she went, she came home with sore feet and a story about a woman named Maria, 60 years old, widowed, cleaning offices for nearly 2 decades. She has grandkids, Mom, Jenna said, kicking off her shoes. She works nights and helps her daughter with childcare during the day. She said it's not the life she dreamed of, but it's hers. She said, there are 2 types of people who end up here, people who never had a chance and people who threw their chance away. At least you know which one you are, honey.
That means you can do something about it.
I tucked that line away in my mind like a small, shining stone. At the same time, while Jenna was starting to scrub other people's office floors, Mr. Harris was scrubbing something else. Paper trails. One afternoon, while Jenna was at work, my phone rang. Mrs. Clark?
Mr. Harris said.
I have some developments regarding Ryan. I went into my bedroom and closed the door. I'm listening, I said. We've managed to track him down, he said. He's in Paris. Or rather, he was there. He's currently being held on suspicion of immigration fraud. It seems he tried to secure residency through a sham marriage. The woman he married there reported him when she found out he was still legally married in the U.S. There was a pause while I processed that. You're telling me he tried to do to another woman what he did to my daughter, I said. In a way, yes, Mr. Harris replied. The good news for Jenna is that in the process of investigating him, authorities uncovered evidence of document forgery related to the loans in her name. We now have proof that her signature was copied on several contracts. That helps our case considerably. So, she's not legally responsible?
I asked.
We're very close to establishing that, he said. With this new evidence, we can argue that she was a victim of fraud, not a willing participant. It won't erase everything overnight, but it will get her out from under the most dangerous debts, the ones that could take your assets down with them. I exhaled slowly. What do you need from me? I asked. For now?
Nothing, he said.
I just wanted you to know the tide is turning in her favor. We're handling the filings. When it's all in place, we can sit down with her and explain. If that's what you want. I looked at the closed bedroom door, at the shadow of my daughter's shoes in the hallway.
It is what I want, I said.
But not yet. You're sure? He asked. Yes, I said. She's only just starting to understand the size of the mess she's in. If I tell her now that you're fixing it, she'll latch onto that and skip the most important part. And what's that? He asked. The part where she learns what it feels like to stand on her own feet, I said. And what it really means to burn down trust and have to rebuild it brick by brick. He was quiet for a moment. That's a heavy lesson, he said. It's a heavy situation, I replied. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Being the person who holds all the strings is exhausting, even when those strings are made of paper and good intentions. Later that week, while I was folding laundry in the living room, Jenna called from her room. Mom, do you know what this is? There was a note in her voice I hadn't heard in a while. Curious. A little wary. I walked down the hall. She was standing by her bed, holding something in her hand. It was another yellow envelope. Smaller than the first, newer. My name written on it again, in Michael's familiar hand. I found it in my bag, she said. Not my suitcase, the old tote I used when I was going through Dad's papers after the funeral. It must have gotten stuck in there. I never noticed it until now. She held it out toward me, eyes wide. It has your name on it, she said. And his handwriting. Do you know what it is? I stared at it. No, I didn't know. But I had a feeling it was about to change the game all over again. I didn't take the envelope right away. For a moment, I just looked at it. Same yellow paper. Same careful letters. Eleanor. Michael must have written it around the same time as the first one. But if he'd meant for me to open them together, he would have put them in the same place. Instead, he'd let this one slip into the chaos of paperwork and grief, knowing, somehow, that it would surface later, like now, when our daughter was back in the house, and the pieces of our life were scattered all over the floor. May I? I asked quietly. It's yours, Jenna said. I think Dad wanted you to see it. I took the envelope from her, feeling the familiar weight of his handwriting, and sat on the edge of the bed. Jenna sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched, like they hadn't in a very long time. I opened it carefully. Inside, there was a short letter and a small, flat key taped to the bottom corner. The key had a number etched into it. 247. I unfolded the letter. Ellie, it began. If you're reading this second letter, it means you've already opened the first one. It also probably means our daughter is going through something hard. Something bigger than the usual scraped knee or a broken heart. My throat tightened. I know you, he wrote. I know your first instinct will be to rescue her completely. To cushion every fall. To erase every consequence. That's who you are. It's one of the reasons I love you. It's also one of the reasons I worry about you. I glanced at Jenna. She was staring at the page, lips pressed tight. This key, the letter continued, is for a safety deposit box at First National Bank, downtown branch. Box number 247. There are some things in there that might help. Not just things of money, but of memory. Use them if you need to. But please, Ellie, use them wisely. Don't throw everything at a problem that our daughter might need to feel for herself. The letter ended simply. Trust yourself. Trust the woman you've become. With love, Michael. I read it twice, then handed it to Jenna. Her eyes moved over the words slowly. When she reached the part about her going through something hard, her shoulders shook. Even when he was dying, she whispered, he was thinking ahead. Thinking about us. That's what he did, I said softly. He thought ahead. She touched the little key with one fingertip. What do you think is in the box? She asked. More papers. Only one way to find out, I said. We'll go tomorrow. Banks make me nervous. They always have. Even when I was younger, I used to feel small in those marble lobbies, standing in line with my little deposit slip while men in suits walked past with briefcases and confidence. The downtown branch of First National hadn't changed much in the last 30 years. Same columns, same tiled floor, same heavy doors that close a little too slowly. When we walked in, Jenna stayed half a step behind me. The young man at the desk looked up and gave us a practice smile. Good morning. How can I help you today? I believe I have a safety deposit box here, I said, holding up the key. Box 247. Of course, he said, taking the key and typing something into his computer. Name? Eleanor Clark. He clicked, frowned slightly, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. Right here. We'll need to see your ID. I handed him my license. He checked it carefully, then signaled to someone behind him. Another employee, a woman about Jenna's age, with a neat bun and tired eyes, came over to lead us to the vault. Right this way, Mrs. Clark, she said. We went through a heavy metal door, down a small hallway, and into a room lined with rows of tiny doors. Each one had its own small lock and number. The clerk slid my key into one of them. 247, she said. Whenever you're done, just ring the bell and I'll come back. She pulled the box out like a drawer and set it on a waist-high table. Then she stepped out, leaving us alone. The room was quiet, just the two of us and a dull hum of the building. Jenna folded her arms across her chest. Why am I nervous? She whispered. It's not like it's a bomb. In this family, I said, paper can be more explosive than anything else. I lifted the lid. Inside, there was no stack of deeds this time. There was a velvet jewelry box, worn at the corners. A small envelope with my name again. And beneath those, a folded list. I opened the jewelry box first. For a moment, the light caught on metal and stone in a way that brought back 100 memories at once. There was my mother-in-law's pearl necklace, the one she'd worn only to church on Easter Sunday. Michael's grandmother's emerald ring, with a tiny chip on the side. The gold bracelet he bought me for our 10th anniversary, the one I stopped wearing when I started working night shifts, afraid I'd scratch a patient with it. Piece after piece, I lifted them out, setting them gently on the table. Mom, Jenna whispered, this must be worth a lot. Sentimental value, yes, I said. She shook her head. No, I mean money. Look at these stones. The gold. These aren't costume jewelry. Dad must have had these appraised. I opened the small envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with neat handwriting. Michael's again, listing each item. Emerald ring. Estimated value. Pearl necklace. Estimated value. Gold bracelet. At the bottom was a total. I sucked in a breath. It was not rich people money, the way you see in movies. But it was a lot for people like us. A very solid cushion. Enough to clear serious debts. Enough to buy time. $200,000, Jenna whispered, reading over my shoulder. Oh my God. We stood there, both of us, looking at the table covered in glittering pieces that had once been wrapped in tissue paper and memories. He planned for everything, Jenna said, voice soft. Even this. I could almost hear Michael's reasoning. Paper assets if you need leverage. Jewelry if you need something more liquid. Something you can use quickly, without banks. Something that can help if the world turns mean. Jenna's breathing changed. This could fix so much, she said. Mom, with this, I could pay off some of the worst loans. At least the ones with the highest interest. I could get the collectors off my back. Maybe even have enough left for you, too. She stopped herself, but I could hear the old habit rising. Have enough left for you to help us again. I turned to look at her. Jenna, I asked quietly. Fix whose problems? She swallowed. Ours, she said. Then corrected herself. Mine. Ryan's not in the picture anymore. He was in the picture when you sold the cabin, I said. He was in the picture when you signed papers. Or didn't read them. He was in the picture when you called me from the hospital and told me my life's memories were now your investment. She flinched like I'd slapped her, though my voice never rose. I know, she said. And I'm not asking you to forget that. I'm drowning, Mom. I don't see any way out except through this. She gestured to the table full of jewels. I'm not asking you to give it all to me, she hurried on. Just some of it. Just enough to keep the worst of it from crushing me. Her eyes were shiny, but there was something else there now besides panic.
Shame.
You think your father put these here, so you could cash them in for Ryan's mistakes? I asked. She looked at the key in my hand, then at the necklace on the table. I don't know what he thought, she whispered. But I know what he'd do if he were here. He'd help me. Yes, I said. He would. I let that sit for a beat. He would also tell you everything you did wrong, I added. In detail. And then he'd sit down with a legal pad and a calculator and make you write it all out yourself. That pulled a tiny, painful smile from her.
Yeah, she said.
He would. We stood there for a few moments, the two of us in that quiet vault room, surrounded by safety and danger all mixed up together. Because that's what money is really. It's not just numbers. It's a tool. A shield. A temptation.
A test.
Especially when it's in the hands of people who have just learned how fragile everything is. Here's what we're going to do, I said finally. She straightened. We're not going to decide anything in this room, I continued. Not while you're this scared. Not while I'm this angry. Fear and anger make expensive decisions. I gestured to the jewelry. We know what's here now. That's enough for today. But, Mom. No, I said, not unkindly but firmly. We're going to put everything back in the box, go home, and think. If we decide to sell something, it will be because it's the right move, not because it's the fastest. She looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she pressed her lips together and nodded. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. We put the pieces back, one by one. The emerald ring. The pearls. The bracelet. Each one making a soft sound against the next as they settled in. I closed the jewelry box and set it back inside. The list went with it. I locked the safety deposit box, slid it into its slot, and rang the little bell to call the clerk back. As we walked out through the lobby, Jenna walked beside me, her shoulders hunched as if she carried a weight no one else could see. Dad trusted you with all of this, she said finally. He trusted you to make the right call. He trusted me to try. I corrected. No one gets it right every time. Not even your sainted father. That earned me a small, real laugh. When we reached the sidewalk, the wind picked up a bit. Jenna pulled her jacket tighter. "Mom," she asked, "what are you going to do?" I looked up at the sky, at the line of buildings, at the bank behind us holding a little box with our past and her possible future tangled together. "I'm going to talk to Mr. Harris," I said. "I want to know exactly how deep Ryan's mess goes. I want to know every debt, every forged signature, every piece of paper with your name on it that shouldn't be. Then, and only then, will I decide how much of your father's legacy goes to cleaning up after a man who walked away." "And me?" she asked, very quietly. "How much of it will go to cleaning up after me?" I turned to her. "That," I said, "depends on how you live from this point forward. Not just how you talk. How you live." She nodded, blinking fast. We walked to the bus stop together. On the ride home, she stared out the window at the passing streets. I knew she was seeing debt collectors and late notices and Ryan's empty side of the closet. I was seeing something else. I was seeing a woman at a crossroads. She could use her father's jewels to patch up the life she'd try to have with a liar. Or she could let the broken pieces cut her just enough to remember and then build something new, with scarred hands that would never sign something they didn't read again. That night, after Jenna left for her cleaning shift, I sat down at the kitchen table with Mr. Harris's card once more. I dialed his number. "Mrs. Clark," he answered. "How are you?" "I have a key," I said. He paused. "I'm guessing that's not a metaphor," he replied. "No," I said. "Safety deposit box.
Jewelry.
Enough to move some mountains." "I see," he said. "And what would you like to do with those mountains?"
"I want you to dig," I said.
"I want a full report on Ryan's debts. Every loan, every credit card, every signature with my daughter's name on it. I want to know, down to the last cent, what she's actually responsible for and what she's not." "I can start that," he said. "It'll take some time, but with the evidence from Europe, we have a strong base." "And Daniel," I added, "this stays between us. Don't tell Jenna. We're doing this." "Not yet." "You're sure?" he asked again. "I'm sure," I said. "If I'm going to use any part of Michael's legacy to free her, I want to know I'm not just erasing the lesson at the same time." He was quiet for a moment. "Understood," he said. "I'll be in touch when I have something solid." When I hung up, the house was very quiet. I could hear the ticking of the clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft rustle of the neighborhood outside. Somewhere across town, my daughter was emptying office trash cans and wiping down desks. Somewhere across an ocean, her husband was sitting in a holding cell, probably planning his next move. And here, at this old kitchen table, I was laying out a different kind of plan. Not a plan of revenge. A plan of education. For her. And whether I liked it or not, for me too. Mr. Harris did exactly what I asked. For the next couple of weeks, my phone became a kind of quiet metronome in the background of our new life. Every few days. "Mrs. Clark, we've pulled more bank records." "Mrs. Clark, we've confirmed forgery on 3 additional contracts." "Mrs. Clark, the European authorities have sent over documentation on Ryan's case." Meanwhile, inside my house, another rhythm was taking shape. Jenna slept a few hours in the mornings, worked on job applications in the afternoons, and went off to clean offices at night. She'd come home after midnight, shoes in her hand, trying not to wake me. As if a mother ever really sleeps soundly when her child isn't home, no matter how old that child is. One night, I pretended to be asleep on the couch when she came in. I heard the front door open, the soft thud of her backpack on the floor, the long exhale of someone who has been on their feet too long. She padded into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took out leftovers. The microwave hummed. A plate clinked on the countertop. Then I heard something that made me keep my eyes closed just a little longer. A quiet humming. A tune I recognized from when she was 8 years old and used to sing to herself while coloring at this very table. For a moment, just a moment, my hardened heart softened all the way through. Maybe that's why I didn't move when she walked back into the living room and pulled a blanket over me. "Good night, Mom," she whispered. I stayed still until I heard her bedroom door click shut. In the days that followed, our conversations began to shift. They weren't just about debts and disasters anymore. Sometimes, over coffee, Jenna would tell me about the people she worked with at night. Ghosts in uniforms moving through empty offices, cleaning up the evidence of someone else's busy day. There was a man in his 50s who listened to old rock music on a tiny speaker clipped to his belt. A young single mother who folded paper towels so neatly you'd think she was preparing gifts, not restocking a restroom. And there was Maria. Maria's a force of nature, Jenna said one morning, stirring sugar into her mug. She's 60. She's been cleaning those same offices for 19 years. Her husband died when her youngest was 4. She raised 3 kids on that paycheck and whatever else she could hustle. She smiled faintly. She told me last night, I wanted a different life, sure. But this one is mine. I'm not ashamed of it. Jenna looked down at her hands. I realized I've been ashamed of every part of my life these last few years, she said. Ashamed when I didn't have enough. Ashamed when I had more. Ashamed when I lost it. What did Maria say when you told her that? I asked. Jenna huffed a little laugh. She said, shame is a fancy coat that keeps you from feeling the weather. Take it off. Get wet. You'll be fine. I couldn't help it. I laughed. That sounds like someone who scrubbed a lot of floors, I said. She has, Jenna replied. She also told me something else. She said there are 2 kinds of people who end up cleaning offices at night. People who never got a fair shot, and people who wasted theirs. She asked me which one I was. What did you tell her? I asked. The truth, Jenna said quietly. I told her I had every opportunity, and I chose the wrong things. I chose comfort. Flash. A man who talked big and listened small. I sold memories for a plane ticket. I signed things I didn't read because I liked believing someone else had it under control. I watched her as she spoke. There was no self-pity in her voice, just inventory. And what did Maria say to that? I asked. She smiled, Jenna said. She said, good. Then you know exactly what you did. That puts you ahead of most people. Now you get to decide who you're going to be next. She took a sip of coffee. Who are you going to be next? I asked. I don't know yet, she said, but I know who I'm not going to be again. That, for me, was the first real sign that my daughter was waking up. Not just from the Europe dream, from something older. From the idea that life was something that happened to her while she watched. Of course, not everyone saw the changes. To the neighborhood, we were still just Eleanor and that daughter who came home in disgrace. One afternoon, as I trimmed the small hedge by the sidewalk, Dolores came bustling over again, her sandals flapping. Did you hear? She whispered, as if the bushes might gossip back. My cousin's friend works at the bank. She says your Jenna has been in there almost every week. Oh, I said, not looking up. Yes. Paying things off. Talking to them about restructuring. She made air quotes with her fingers. People are saying she got herself into a big mess, but at least she's trying to fix it. That's something, I suppose. It is, I said simply. Dolores peered toward my front window. She's still working? She asked. Or is she just, staying here? She's working nights, I said. Cleaning offices. Dolores's eyebrows jumped. You're Jenna, she said. The one who used to post pictures of fancy drinks and rooftop parties on that Instagram thing? Cleaning toilets. Bathrooms, I corrected. And floors. And desks. All of it. She shook her head slowly. Well, she said, I never thought I'd say this, but I respect that more than the Instagram. She put a hand on my arm. You're a good mother, Eleanor, she added. Most women would have slammed the door in that girl's face after what she did. You took her back. I looked at my hedge. I didn't take her back, I said quietly. I opened the door and let her decide if she wanted to walk through it. Dolores gave me a puzzled look, then patted my arm and wandered back to her porch, no doubt ready to translate my words into something easier for the neighborhood. But I meant exactly what I said. We can't drag our children into maturity. We can only open the door and stand there, firm and patient, while they decide which way to go. One Friday morning, just as the sun was starting to make patterns on my kitchen floor, my phone rang. Mrs. Clark, Mr. Harris said. I think we're ready. Ready for what? I asked, though my stomach already knew.
For the full picture, he said.
We've traced every loan Ryan took out. We've confirmed every forged signature in Jenna's name. We've contacted the banks and presented the evidence. Some are fighting harder than others, but with the fraud case in Europe, they don't have much ground to stand on. And my daughter? I asked. She can be released from most of the debt, he said. Legally. We'll still have to tidy up her credit reports, but the big threats, the ones that could put liens on your properties or drain your accounts, they're falling away. We're going to be able to clear her without using a dime of your assets if we push hard enough. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. And what about Ryan? I asked. He'll be facing his own consequences, Mr. Harris said. Between the sham marriage abroad and the documents here, I wouldn't want to be him. Neither would I said. There was a pause. Mrs. Clark, he said, we can keep working quietly, but I'd suggest we bring Jenna into this soon. Not to take over, but to face it. To see, with her own eyes, how close she came to losing everything, and how much you've done to prevent that. You want me to tell her, I said. I think it's time, he replied. Not just for her. For you. This secret is heavy. You shouldn't have to carry all of it alone. I looked around my kitchen. The table where Michael once counted our pennies, where Jenna once did her homework, where I now sat with my phone pressed to my ear, holding 2 lives inside one body. All right, I said. Set up a meeting. For all 3 of us. When? He asked. As soon as possible, I said. Before she convinces herself this life is just a temporary nightmare she can wake up from without learning anything. When Jenna came home from work that afternoon, still smelling faintly of cleaning solution, I was waiting for her at the table. Long night? I asked. She dropped her bag and rolled her shoulders. Always, she said. But Maria showed me a trick with the mops. Saved my back about 10 years. She poured herself some water, drank, and then noticed the folder on the table between us. What's that? She asked. I made an appointment, I said. With Mr. Harris. My attorney. Your father's friend. Fear flashed across her face. Did the banks, is something wrong? She asked. Am I losing the house? Are you? I held up a hand. Sit down, I said. Nothing's happening this second. But yes, something is wrong. And something is right. And it's time you saw both. She sat. Do I need to bring anything? She asked. Statements, letters? I've got most of it, I said. What you need to bring is your ears. And whatever courage you've built in these last few months. She looked at the folder again. Mom, she said, voice small. Are you mad at me? Still. I thought about that. I'm past mad, I said. Anger is sharp. It passes through you. What's left afterward is something heavier. But it's also something we can use. Use, she repeated. To build, I said. Or to burn. That's what this meeting is about. Deciding which. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said. When is it? Friday morning, I replied. 10 o'clock. I'll be there, she said. The morning of the meeting, she dressed more carefully than I'd seen since she came home. Nothing flashy. Just a clean blouse, slacks that didn't quite fit the way they used to, and flats that had walked more miles than she'd planned. I wore Michael's favorite color on me, a soft blue blouse, and a pair of earrings he'd given me one Christmas, when Jenna was still too young to understand why grown women cried over tiny boxes. On the bus ride downtown, Jenna stared out the window. Mom, she said finally. Yes. If Mr. Harris tells me I'm responsible for everything, she said, all the debt, all the forged stuff, all of it, and if he says you have to pay, I want you to know something. What's that? I asked. I don't want you to, she said. I'll pay for it, even if it takes the rest of my life. I'll clean offices until I'm Maria's age. I don't want you losing anything else because of me. I looked at her profile. The girl who used to pout when we couldn't afford the latest shoes was gone. The woman sitting next to me now was scared, yes, but she was also willing to face the bill for the first time. We'll see what he says, I replied. And then we'll decide. Together. Do you hate me? She asked suddenly. I didn't answer right away. She turned, panicked. Mom, if you do, please just say it. I've been wondering. I don't hate you, I interrupted. I've been angrier with you than I knew was possible. I've been disappointed. I've been hurt. But hate. I shook my head. No. Hate is clean. What I feel is messy. And love is always messy. Tears pooled in her eyes. I don't deserve that, she whispered. That's not how love works, I said. That's how transactions work. You, of all people, should know the difference by now. She let out a small, wet laugh. You always did know how to land a line, she said. I've had time to practice, I answered. The bus lurched to a stop. We'd reached downtown. Come on, I said, standing slowly. Let's go see what your father left behind besides envelopes and jewelry. Because he had left something else, too. He had left a path. Not just for money. For us. Mr. Harris's office looked the same as before. Same beige lobby. Same soft hum of the air conditioner. Same framed degree on the wall behind his desk. The only thing different was us. Last time I was here, I was a widow with a secret envelope and a daughter who had just sold my memories. This time, I was a woman who had spent months watching that daughter slowly come apart and stitch herself back together. Crooked, but stronger. The receptionist smiled when she saw me. Good morning, Mrs. Clark, she said. Then, glancing at Jenna, and you must be her daughter. Jenna nodded nervously. Yes, I'm Jenna. Mr. Harris is ready for you both, the woman said. Go on in. We walked down the hallway together. My steps were slow, hers were uneven. Mr. Harris stood when we entered. Mrs. Clark, he said, shaking my hand. And you must be Jenna. I've heard a lot about you. Jenna swallowed. I hope some of it was good, she tried to joke. He gave her a small, kind smile. All of it was honest, he replied. Have a seat. We sat. He took his place behind the desk, folded his hands, and looked at us both for a moment, me with a steady gaze, Jenna with a measuring one. First, he said, I want to thank you for coming in together. That's not easy, given what you've both been through. Jenna shifted in her chair. I just want the truth, she said. Even if it's ugly. Oh, there is some ugly in here, he said, tapping a folder. But there's also some good. Let's start with the ugly so we can end with the good. Agreed. She nodded. He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of documents. These, he said, are copies of the loan agreements taken out over the last few years. Some are in Ryan's name. Some are in both your names. And some appear to be in your name alone, Jenna. Her face went pale. I swear I didn't sign. He held up a hand. I know, he said. Just let me walk you through it. He pointed to the top page. This is a line of credit tied to an investment account, he said. Ryan's signature here is real. Yours here is not. We've confirmed that with a handwriting expert. He slid it aside. This mortgage on a second property, he continued. Falsified income. Falsified assets. Again, Ryan signed as you. We know this because he used the same signature on at least 3 different applications. People who forge don't realize how consistent their mistakes are. He went page by page. Every time he pointed to a signature, Jenna leaned in, her eyes flicking between the paper and her own hand, as if she could will them to match. They didn't. By the time he reached the bottom of the stack, her hands were clenched into fists on her knees. So, when the banks told me I was responsible, she said, they were wrong. They were operating with incomplete information, Mr. Harris corrected calmly. From their perspective, your name was on everything. They had no reason to doubt the documents until we showed them the fraud. Now they're revising that perspective. What does that mean? She asked. In plain English. In plain English, he said, it means you are being removed as the responsible party on most of these debts. The ones tied strictly to Ryan's fraud will be discharged from your name entirely. The ones that you did sign, knowingly or not, are being restructured, with far lighter terms and a clear separation between you and Ryan. She stared at him. So, I'm not ruined, she whispered. He tilted his head. You're not ruined, he said. You're bruised. There's a difference. Your credit will still need time and work to recover. There will be scars on your financial record. Let's not pretend otherwise. But the worst-case scenarios, the lawsuits, the liens, the possibility of losing everything your mother owns, that's off the table now. Her eyes filled. Did you do all this? She asked. I did my job, he said. But I had a client who made it possible. He looked at me. Your mother, he added, acted quickly and quietly to protect you, even when you didn't know it. Jenna turned to me, stunned. You mean while I was freaking out about collection calls and cleaning offices, she said slowly, you were fixing this? Behind my back. I met her eyes. No, I said. I wasn't fixing it. I was fighting for the truth. There's a difference. Mr. Harris has been fighting for it too. But why didn't you tell me? She asked, anger starting to fizz under the fear. Why did you let me think I was going to be crushed? Why did you let me clean offices? I finished for her. Worry? Feel the weight of your choices. Yes, she snapped, then caught herself. I mean, I don't understand. That, Mr. Harris said gently, is only half of why we're here. He closed the first folder and opened another. This, he said, is the rest. He turned it around and slid it toward Jenna. On top were copies of the same documents I'd seen months earlier in my kitchen. Company papers, property lists, account statements. She frowned, picking up the first page. Clark Family Holdings, LLC, she read aloud. What is this? That, Mr. Harris said, is the company your father created. The one that owns the lake cabin. The one that owns the Maple Heights apartment building. And several other properties you probably didn't know about. Her forehead creased. I thought the condo was Ryan's, she said slowly. We always said, it was our place. Mr. Harris nodded. Yes, he said. A lot of people say that about rentals. But saying it doesn't make it true. On paper, legally, that building has never belonged to you or your husband. It belongs to Clark Family Holdings. And Clark Family Holdings belongs to... He turned his gaze to me. Your mother. Jenna looked from him to me, then back at the papers. No, she whispered. She flipped through the pages, faster now. The cabin address. The apartment building. The other houses. The bank accounts. My name isn't on any of this, she said. No, I said. It's not. She put the stack down like it was suddenly hot. How long have you known, she asked, turning to me, that we had all this? Since the day you called me from the hospital waiting room and told me you'd sold the cabin, I said calmly. She recoiled as if I'd struck her. You knew then, she said. When I was in Europe. When I called you crying from airports. When I came home with nothing. You already knew you could fix everything. Yes, I said. And you just watched. Her voice rose. You just watched me fall apart, thinking I had destroyed both our lives? I watched you live through the consequences of your choices, I said. That's not the same as watching you die. Silence snapped into the room like a rubber band. Mr. Harris shifted slightly in his chair, but he didn't say anything. This part wasn't his. Jenna's breath came fast and shallow. You let me believe I'd made you poor, she said, voice shaking. You let me believe I'd taken your last roof. Your last safety net. You let me believe I'd ruined you. I didn't let you believe anything, I said quietly. You believed it because you never bothered to ask what was really there before you started selling things off. She flinched. That's cruel, she whispered. No, I replied. What you did was cruel. What I did was deliberate. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Mr. Harris cleared his throat softly. Jenna, he said, if I may, your mother had, and has, every legal right to press charges. To have you investigated for fraud. To sue you for damages. To have you removed from any property connected to her. Jenna stared at him, stunned. She could have, she breathed. Yes, he said simply. She chose not to. He glanced at me, then back at Jenna. She chose, he continued, to secure her assets, to reverse the illegal sale of the cabin, to regain the truck, and to fight quietly on your behalf to clear your name. Without telling you. Not because she enjoys watching you suffer, but because she wanted you to understand something that no amount of lecture could ever teach. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, he asked, if she had sat you down the day you came back and said, "Don't worry, honey, your dad secretly made me rich. I'll pay off all your debts, and we'll forget this ever happened." What lesson would you have learned? Jenna didn't answer. He waited. Finally, she said, I would have learned that no matter what I do, there's always someone who will bail me out. He nodded. And now, he asked, what have you learned instead? She looked at the papers, at her hands, at me. I've learned that someone did bail me out, she said slowly. But not with money. Her eyes filled again. You let me hit bottom, she whispered, and didn't throw me a pillow. No, I said. I didn't. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. That hurt, she said. Yes, I replied. It did. I hated you some nights, she confessed. Especially when I came home from work, exhausted, and saw you at the table with your tea, like nothing was wrong. Something was wrong, I said. But not just with your life. With the way you looked at mine. I took a breath. When you sold the cabin, I continued, you didn't see it as part of my heartbeat. You saw it as an asset. When you sold your father's truck, you didn't hear his laugh in the squeaky seat. You saw dollars. When you called me from that hospital, you didn't hear my fear. You heard an obstacle. I needed you to feel, in your own bones, what it means to be treated like that. She buried her face in her hands. I'm sorry, she said, voice muffled. I am so sorry. I know, I said. She dropped her hands and looked at Mr. Harris. So what happens now? She asked. Legally. Financially. What do I owe? What does Mom owe? What do we do? He shuffled the 2 stacks of papers, debt and assets, and then spoke very clearly. Legally, he said, you will soon owe very little from Ryan's schemes. Once the last of these fraud claims are processed, the majority of those debts will not be yours. The few that are truly yours can be managed. It will take time and discipline, but they will not define the rest of your life. He tapped the asset folder. Financially, he continued, your mother is in a very strong position. She is not at risk of losing her home. She is not at risk of destitution. In fact, if she wanted to, she could live quite comfortably without lifting another finger. He paused. But whether she chooses to use any of this for you, he added, is not a legal question. It's a moral one. A personal one. That's between you and her. Jenna turned back to me. I don't want you to, she blurted. I mean, I don't want you to feel like you have to use any of this for me. Not after what I did. I'll keep working. I'll pay what's mine. I'll live in your spare room and cook and clean until I can afford my own place. I don't want you to spend $1 you don't want to spend. I looked at her for a long time. You say that now, I said. Would you have said it 6 months ago? No, she admitted. 6 months ago, I would have said, of course you'll help me. You're my mother. And now? I pressed. Now, she swallowed. Now I think I'd rather earn the right to ask. That right there was the sentence I had been waiting for since the day she moved out of this house the first time. I exhaled. Here is what I'm willing to do, I said. She straightened, listening like someone at the edge of a verdict. I will continue working with Mr. Harris to clear your name from everything that was not truly yours to carry, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because I can and because your father would have wanted me to protect you from crimes you didn't commit. A tear slipped down her cheek. But as for the rest, I continued, the pieces that were yours, the shortcuts you took, the warnings you ignored, the times you looked at me and saw a wallet instead of a person, those are yours to pay for. In money, in time, in humility. I won't take that away from you. She nodded, tears falling freely now. And the money, she asked. The properties? Everything? That, I said, will serve a different purpose. I looked at Mr. Harris. Daniel, I asked, do you have the paperwork we discussed about the lake house? He reached into his drawer and pulled out another document. Yes, he said, sliding it over. All drafted. Just needs your signature. Jenna looked back and forth between us, confused. What paperwork? She asked. I smiled faintly. Something your father and I started together, without knowing exactly how and when it would be used, I said. We built that cabin as our sanctuary. Now, it's time for it to become something more. I placed my finger on the document. I am transferring the use of the lake house, I said, to a small foundation in my name. Its purpose will be to provide temporary housing for women who have been financially abused, abandoned, or tricked. Women like you. Women like me. Women who trusted the wrong people and need somewhere safe to land while they rebuild. Jenna's mouth fell open. You're turning our cabin into a shelter? She said. Into a refuge, I corrected. For people who need a porch swing and a quiet lake to remember who they are, away from the noise and the shame. You, if you want it. Others, if they need it more. She stared at me, then at the document. You're not giving it to me, she said. No, I answered. I am inviting you to help me run it. She blinked. Help you run it, she repeated. You've seen what it looks like to be on the wrong side of a bad deal, I said. You've talked to creditors.
You've worked nights.
You've eaten humble pie, 3 meals a day. That makes you qualified in ways money never could. If you want to, you can use that pain for something more than your own regret. She took a shaky breath. What would I do? She asked. Anything that needs doing, I said. Welcome women when they arrive. Listen. Help them call lawyers. Sit with them while they stare at piles of paper they don't understand. Tell them what Maria told you. Tell them what you've learned. And one day, if you still want to, we can talk about you going back to school. Social work. Counseling. Something that turns this whole mess into a tool instead of a scar. She covered her mouth with her hand. Mom, she whispered, I don't deserve this. How many times are you going to say that? I asked gently. Deserving has very little to do with it. I'm not offering you a reward. I'm offering you a chance. She nodded slowly, tears dripping onto her blouse. Okay, she said. Okay. Mr. Harris slid a pen toward me. Whenever you're ready, Mrs. Clark, he said. I picked it up. My hand didn't shake. I signed my name. Not as a woman who had been tricked, not as a victim. As a mother who had finally understood that the greatest inheritance we can leave our children is not a house, or a bank account, or even a cabin by a lake. It's a clear example of what it looks like to hold your own life in your own hands, firmly, kindly, and without apology. I'm not at the end of the story yet. We still have some pages to turn together. The weeks after that meeting felt different. Not lighter, exactly. Just clearer. It's like when the eye doctor finally clicks the right lens into place and says, how about now? The world doesn't change, but the edges do. Jenna and I walked out of Mr. Harris's office together in silence. On the sidewalk, she stopped and looked up at the sky like she was trying to swallow a storm. You really meant it, she said. About the lake house. About the shelter. Yes, I said. And you really meant it, she went on, voice shaking, about not wiping everything away for me. About letting me pay for my part. Yes, I said again. She nodded, more to herself than to me. Then I guess, she took a breath, I guess I'd better go take a nap before my shift. The offices aren't going to clean themselves. There was no drama. No scene. Just a tired woman choosing to keep doing the hard thing even after she'd learned she might not have to. That night, when she left for work, she paused in the doorway. Mom, she said. Yes. Thank you, she whispered, for not making this easy. I wanted to say it wasn't easy for me either. But I didn't. Some truths are better left implied. The paperwork for the foundation moved faster than I expected. Maybe it was because Mr. Harris had done this sort of thing before. Maybe it was because Michael, in his quiet way, had already laid groundwork I didn't know about. We named it something simple. The Clark Refuge. No big slogans. No fancy logo. Just a small line in the registry and a deed that now tied our lake cabin to a new purpose. Jenna helped me sort through old linens and dishes to take out there. This towel has more holes than fabric, she said, holding one up. That towel dried you after your first swim. I answered. We keep it. What about this mug? She asked, holding up a chipped coffee cup. That mug was in your father's hand every morning for 20 years, I said. We keep it too. The women who come out there won't need perfection. They'll need proof that things can be cracked and still hold warmth. She didn't argue. We drove out to the lake one cool morning, the truck bed full of boxes. The cabin looked the same from the outside, weathered wood, crooked porch swing, little docks stretching into the water. But we were different now. Inside, Jenna moved slowly through each room. She touched the back of the couch where Michael used to sit and read. She ran her fingers along the kitchen counter where I'd chopped vegetables every summer. I remember spilling juice here, she said, pointing to a faint stain. You yelled because it was the nice table. You were 7, I said. You poured the whole pitcher and walked away. She smiled a little. I didn't see the mess, she said. I only saw the glass I was holding. I raised an eyebrow. Nothing much has changed then, I said. She huffed a soft laugh. I see a lot more mess now, she replied. We spent the afternoon cleaning, airing out rooms, labeling drawers. In one of the small bedrooms, we made up the bed with fresh sheets and a quilt I'd sewn from old dresses years ago. Who do you think will sleep here first? Jenna asked. Someone who thinks they don't deserve a soft pillow, I said. Those seem to find their way to places like this. She looked at me. Do I? She asked. Do what? I said. Deserve a soft pillow, she said quietly. I straightened a corner of the quilt. You earned a hard one for a while, I answered. You've been sleeping on it. That matters. Whether you move to a softer one now, that's not about deserve. That's about what you do next. She nodded slowly. I want to help, she said. Really help. Not just use this place as a hideout from my own life. Good, I said. Because I'm not running a hideout. I'm building a refuge. There's a difference. We stood in the doorway of that little room for a long moment, 2 women looking at an empty bed that would one day hold a lot of heavy stories. Our first resident came sooner than I expected. She arrived not through a government agency, not through a brochure, but through Maria. One night, Jenna came home from work with a different kind of tired on her face. Mom, she said, setting her bag down gently, there's someone I want you to meet. Not tonight, but soon. She told me about Tanya, 38, 2 kids. A husband who liked control more than partnership. No bruises on the outside, plenty on the inside. He ran up credit cards in her name, quit jobs without telling her, borrowed money from her parents and never paid it back. When she finally tried to leave, Jenna said, he told her she was nothing without him, that no one would help, that she was financially ruined and it was all her fault. I felt a familiar anger rise up, the kind that makes your fingers go cold. How did she end up cleaning offices at night? I asked. Because he said real women don't complain about a little extra responsibility, Jenna said. He said if she was going to act single, she could pay half the bills. Then he kept spending. I see, I said. Maria brought her into the job, Jenna continued. Gave her a little bit of cash and a lot of quiet listening. When I told Maria about the cabin, she said, maybe that refuge of yours doesn't have to wait for some official program, honey. Maybe it starts with one person we already know. I smiled. I like Maria, I said. So do I, Jenna replied. I thought maybe if you're okay with it, we could invite Tanya and the kids to spend a weekend at the cabin. Get a taste of what it feels like to be somewhere her husband doesn't own. Somewhere the bills aren't in his name. Does he know about her cleaning job? I asked. Yes, she said. He thinks it makes him look like a big man. My wife works and I still pay most of the bills, he told her. But he doesn't know about us. Or the cabin. Then yes, I said. We can invite her. Quietly. Carefully. Jenna's shoulders relaxed a little. Thank you, she said. You're the one who found her, I replied. I'm just setting an extra place at the table. Tanya and her 2 children came out to the cabin 2 weeks later. We didn't make a big announcement. We didn't call it a program. We told her the truth. A friend has a cabin by a lake. She's opening it up for women who need a breather. Would you like a weekend away with the kids? She showed up with one small suitcase and a look I recognized instantly. It's the look of someone who has been told too many times that they don't get to decide where they rest. Her kids ran down to the water, squealing, tossing stones. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching them like she was afraid joy might be a trap. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It's old," I corrected, "but it's sturdy. Kind of like me." That made her smile. "Thank you for letting us stay," she said. "I don't usually accept help." "Neither do I said. "But sometimes help isn't charity. Sometimes it's a trade." "A trade?" she asked. "You give this place your laughter for a few days," I said. "You let your kids run wild and forget what stress sounds like. In return, the cabin gives you a few nights of sleep without someone criticizing the way you breathe. It seems like a fair exchange to me." Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. "I'll try," she said. Over the weekend, Jenna and I took turns. She played in the water with the kids, showed them how to skip stones, taught them the silly song Michael used to sing on long drives. I stayed mostly in the kitchen, making pancakes, washing dishes, listening. Not to the children. They were loud enough without extra attention, but to the sound of Tanya's voice as it slowly changed. The first night, it was full of disclaimers. I know I should have seen it sooner. I know it's partly my fault. I know other women have it worse. By the third night, there were fewer apologies and more facts. He put the car in his name, so I couldn't leave. He controlled the money and made me ask for groceries. He told me I was stupid every time I questioned him. Facts are where freedom begins. On the last morning, as we stood on the porch with our coffee, she turned to me. "Jenna told me about everything," she said, choosing her words carefully. "About the cabin, about your husband, about what your daughter did, about what she's doing now." I glanced at Jenna, who was sitting at the water's edge with the kids, pant legs rolled up, hair blowing in the breeze. "She told you we're both stubborn fools?" I asked. "She told me she sold this place once," Tanya said, "and that you took it back. And that instead of rubbing that in her face for the rest of her life, you turned it into this." She gestured around. "I did rub it in a bit," I admitted. "I'm not a saint." She smiled. "She said you let her fall," Tanya continued, "and then, instead of throwing her a rope and dragging her where you wanted her, you stood there and said, 'If you want to climb out, I'm here. But you're going to use your own hands.'" I took a sip of coffee. "That sounds like something I'd say," I replied. She looked at me, eyes steady. "I hope one day," she said, "I can talk to my kids the way you talk to her." "You already are," I said. "You brought them here." That's the first conversation. Back in town, life kept moving. Dolores, of course, noticed the extra groceries and weekends when my driveway was empty. "Where have you two been sneaking off to?" she asked one day. "Got yourselves a secret vacation spot?" "You might say that," I replied. "Well," she sniffed. "Good. You deserve something nice." If she ever connected the dots between the gossip she heard at the bank and the quiet women coming and going from my house, she never said. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. Not every truth needs a neighborhood committee. Jenna kept working nights, even after Mr. Harris confirmed that the worst of her legal storm had passed. "You don't have to keep doing that, you know," I told her one morning as she massaged her calves. "You've paid a good chunk of your penance." She shook her head. "It's not penance anymore," she said. "It's perspective. There's something honest about scrubbing someone else's mess. It reminds me what I'm capable of and what I never want to forget." "Fair enough," I said. She started taking evening classes at the community college. At first, just one. Introduction to Social Work. She'd come home with stories about case studies, statistics, theories. Then she'd tell me how those theories looked in real life, at the cleaning job, at the grocery store, at our kitchen table. One afternoon, she dropped a letter in front of me. "It's from a university," she said, trying and failing to sound casual. "They have a master's program. Social work." I applied. "And?" I asked. "I got in," she said. "They start in the fall." "That's wonderful," I said. She held up a hand. "But before you say anything," she added quickly, "I want you to know, I'm going to pay for it myself. I've been saving for my shifts. It will take longer. I'll have to juggle work and school.
But I need to do it that way.
For me. I looked at her. At this point, I said, if you'd asked me to pay for it, I would have said no. She blinked. You would, she asked. Yes, I said. Not because I wouldn't want to help. Because this has to be yours. Not mine. Not a delayed gift from your father. Yours. Her shoulders eased. Okay then, she said. We agree. One evening, months later, we were sitting on the porch of the cabin. We'd just finished a small group session with 3 women staying that weekend. Jenna had led most of it. I just listened, chiming in where needed. The sun was slipping behind the trees, turning the lake into a sheet of dull gold. Mom, Jenna said. Yes. I got a letter from Ryan today, she said. My hand tightened around my mug. From where? I asked.
Prison, she said simply.
In France.
He says he's sorry.
He says he wants forgiveness. He says he's a changed man. Do you believe him? I asked. She watched a bird skim across the surface of the water before answering. I believe he's sorry his plans didn't work, she said. I believe he regrets getting caught. I don't know that he understands what he did to me.
To us.
To himself. Are you going to write back? I asked. She thought for a long moment. No, she said finally. Not because I hate him. I don't have the energy to hate him anymore. But because that chapter is over. There's nothing else to say. I nodded. Sometimes the strongest answer is silence, I said. She turned to look at me. What about you? She asked. If Dad were here, what do you think he'd say about all of this? I smiled, picturing him on that porch swing, hands folded over his stomach, listening to us with that half-amused, half-proud look he used to get. I think he'd say, "Took you long enough," I replied. She laughed. And then, I added, I think he'd get very quiet and very humble because he'd realize that for all his planning, for all his envelopes and companies and safety deposit boxes, the real work wasn't what he did on paper. It was what you and I did sitting at that kitchen table, telling each other the truth. She was quiet for a while after that. Then she said, "Thank you for not being just a nice mom." I raised an eyebrow. Nice is easy, I said. Nice doesn't build anything strong. At my age, I don't have time left for nice. I have time for real. She took my hand. Real is scary, she said. Real is holy, I answered. We sat there until the mosquitoes reminded us that even holy moments have their limits. You know, when you get to be my age, people like to talk to you as if your story is over. They pat your arm and say things like, "You've had a good life," as if the only thing left is to flip through old photo albums and wait. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes, the most important chapters of your story don't happen when you're young. Sometimes, they happen when your hands are wrinkled, your knees ache, and everyone assumes you're done. Sometimes, the biggest shift in your life is not the wedding day, or the day your child is born, or the day you buy a house. Sometimes, it's the day you realize you can love your child without sacrificing your self-respect. You can forgive without forgetting what happened. You can be generous without erasing the lesson. And you can be old without being finished. If you're still with me at this point in the story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in my shoes? Have you ever sat at a kitchen table with a child 40, 50, 60 years old on the outside, still so young on the inside, and thought, I love you more than my own life, but I cannot keep saving you from yourself? Or maybe you've been in Jenna's shoes, realizing too late that the person you took for granted was the one holding the safety net the whole time. If any of that sounds familiar, then this isn't just my story. It's yours too. I'm not here to tell you to copy what I did. Every family is different. Every wound is a different shape. But I am here as an old woman on a porch to remind you, you are allowed to set boundaries, even with your children. You are allowed to protect what you've built. You are allowed to say, I will walk with you while you face the consequences, but I will not carry them for you. That's not cruelty. That's love with a backbone. And if you're the one who has made the mistakes, if you're listening to this thinking, I'm Jenna in this story, I want you to hear this too. You are not ruined. Bruised? Yes. Embarrassed? Of course. Tired of your own bad decisions? I hope so. But as long as you're still here, breathing, listening to an old woman ramble on the internet, you are not finished. You can choose who you're going to be next. Not with speeches. With small, stubborn, honest steps. So tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a small kitchen like mine? In a quiet apartment? In a nursing home with a roommate who snores? In a car that feels more like home than the place you're parked in front of? I'd like to know. Not out of curiosity. Out of companionship. Because even though I'm just a voice coming through your phone or your TV, I'm also a woman who has sat where you're sitting now, trying to make peace with the past and figure out if there's still a future. If this story touched something in you, if it made you feel less alone or a little braver, or maybe just a little more understood, feel free to share your thoughts with me. I read more than you think. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories of ordinary people late in life, facing extraordinary choices, well, you know where to find me. This is Eleanor from Elderly Wisdom, sending you a warm hug through the screen. Take gentle care of your old wounds. Guard your soft heart with firm hands. And remember, you're not done yet.